It's 10 times the terror.
Hello there! Getting old and senile.
Hey everybody, welcome to 10 Times the Terror. My name is Ralph,
And I'm Paul.
and today we are delighted and honored to have with us Billy Gray, child actor, inventor, motorcycle enthusiast, and all-around good guy. And so, Billy, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Well, we're so happy to have you, Billy. If I understand, you started out your career at the age of 5 years old.
Yeah. My mom was an actress, and I was running around the theater. That my brother was in a play, and her agent saw me running around and said, "Take me to your mother." And she turns out it was my mother's agent. So she said, "I can get this kid some work." And so I started going out on bit part interviews and got almost every one I went on. So I just kept on going.
So what did you think about that as a little kid? Did you just kind of like a Gort the robot, just do what you told, or did you say like, what the heck is going on here?
No, it was great fun. It was one of the things that happens is that you're treated as if you were a professional right off the bat, because the shows that you're working on, they're all pros, and they kind of expect you to be a pro too, and that kind of expectation, I think, is good for people.
So what's the first thing that you do, Billy, that brings you to the next level from doing little spots?
Well, yeah, it just I probably did 2 or 3 score of just being on the corner, not even saying anything, and then every once in a while you'd get something that you'd say a couple of words, and then the next one you'd say a few more, and it just kind of over about the first 4 or 5 years, I got to where I was getting small. They got bigger and bigger as time went on.
Paul, you must be interested in Bill's being in a landmark film with Humphrey Bogart, In a Lonely Place.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that I made that movie. As a matter of fact, I was just watching TV, and I'm a big Bogart fan, and so I was watching along, and I saw myself and say, "Hey, that's me."
Do you have memories of Bogart?
Pardon me?
Do you have memories of Bogart?
No, I'd forgotten that I even worked with him, and in fact, the scene was kind of neat. I'm standing on a little ridge or a little ledge, and I'm eye to eye with him, and as he's walking into the restaurant, I get to stop him and say, "Are you anybody?" And he demurs and says he's not particular. So we had a little back and it was great to be involved. I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm sure glad I had a scene with Humphrey Bogart.
I understand, Bill, that you also worked with Bob Hope and Doris Day.
Yeah, I worked with Doris Day in 2 movies, on Moonlight Bay and By the Light of the Silvery Moon. The on Moonlight Bay was the first one, and it did so well. Apparently, it made more money for them than anything they'd ever done before. And so the next couple of year or 2 later, they did another one, and it turned out pretty good as well.
If I could ask, how did you happen to get involved with The Day the Earth Stood Still?
Well, it was just another interview. I was getting larger parts by then, and you just go in and you talk to the director, and they ask you some questions. You read some lines maybe, and just if they like you, they hire you.
Bill, I understand that you auditioned for a part in the Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was interesting because the director was Nick Ray, and he had directed, ironically, In a Lonely Place, my Bogart scene. I didn't realize who the director was at those, way back then, but he apparently remembered and had me in for this interview for Rebel Without a Cause, and we got along, and he said, "Yeah, I want you," and I went to wardrobe, and I actually did a test as well. with I think it was Natalie Wood and I think Nick Adams did the Dean part for the test, and so I thought I was going to do it, and then turns out they had to postpone the shooting schedule for a couple of weeks, and I was on an interim period and working with Father Knows Best, and it kind of interfered with their schedule.
Yeah.
I tried to get him to, or my agent tried to get him to shoot around me for a couple of weeks, but they didn't think that was such a good idea, and so I didn't get to be in that movie, which in hindsight is probably a good thing. I'm still here, and most of those people aren't.
I want to talk about the day you were still, but I want to leave that towards the end and talk a little bit about your experience of getting on what was obviously one of the most popular shows of its time, Father Knows Best. And I have to say, having just recently spent some money in watching and buying Ozzie and Harriet, which I actually had to stop. It was just too much. I thought that Father Knows Best was a level up, because there was some reality to it, even though, it's in the 50s, of course. But you did play a rather unique kind of a kid. You weren't the perfect squeaky clean kid in the show. Typical Billy.
Bud was very human.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of you in that part. You've always been a little mischievous. Let's put it that way. You don't fit that mold that many people wanted you to fit into, which thankfully was for your own benefit. You learned how to deal with life at an early age. But tell us a little bit about Father Knows Best.
Well, one of the things that set it apart was that Robert Young originated the show on radio, and they did it for several years. I wasn't involved in any of that. And then when they took it to television, the only person that had their only company that had a time slot available was Kent Cigarettes. And the original title of the radio show was Father Knows Best with a question mark at the end, and a little irony. And then when they took it to television, Kent said, "No question mark. We don't like that concept." And Robert Young told me that he fought to keep the question mark on there, but said it was a deal breaker for Kent Cigarettes. They didn't want any irony or ambiguity or anything like that, so it turned into a declarative sentence: "Father Knows Best," period, which turned his concept on its head totally, and I think did a lot of damage in the long run, just because his concept was obviously a question authority. Don't just buy into what anybody tells you. Listen,
right.
To thine own self be true, kind of thing.
Yes.
And when it got turned on its head, it became a cliche. I mean, Father Knows Best. Bang,
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And I think it's. Maybe I'm attributing too much to it, but that concept led us down a very bad road.
Talk a little bit about that, Bill.
Well, we had people running the country in those days that weren't their heart wasn't in the right place. They weren't doing the right thing. It was 1954 was Brown versus Board of Education, and MAD. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Mutual Assured Destruction.
Oh, sure.
But it was duck and cover and all that kind of thing, and they were trying to hoodwink the American public that there was real danger, and they just wanted to spend a lot of money on the military. Is basically what it boiled down to, in hindsight. So the concept of don't question authority, just go along with what the leaders want you to do, is not a good thing. And I'm kind of sorry that got so prominent a response. Everybody just kind of bought into, okay, well, if they're saying it's this or that, well, I'm sure it's this or that, but it isn't this or that. It's whatever your conscious mind tells you it is after some deliberation, and people don't deliberate anymore. They just go along, like the church, that kind of thing. They just if some evangelist tells you you're going to rot in hell if you don't do this, that, or the other thing, you're terrorized into believing.
Oh, yeah.
So I just don't think it's a good thing. In fact, so my little feeble attempt to ameliorate that is when I end communications with people on email or whatnot, I end with "you know best," and the "for you" is silent, but it's implied. So that's my take on Father Knows Best.
Yeah, if I could jump in, it also was a period of censorship, which both artistically and intellectually was very damaging. And
well, we didn't have any black people, for one thing, in the show. 200 and so episodes, there wasn't one black person anywhere, even walking down the street. So I mean that wasn't an accident.
That's pretty typical, though, probably of TV in that era.
Oh, very typical. Because I think the rationale was if they had any black people, they wouldn't be able to show it in the South. If there was somebody in a schoolroom setting, somebody down south would have objected, and they wouldn't have gotten it on the screen. Yeah. So
our focus on horror, sci-fi, and suspense and so forth. That stuff was very much being criticized. I know as a kid growing up in that period, they had this set of books which of classic stories, everything from Sherlock Holmes to Treasure Island to Black Beauty. Mm-hmm. But they would have on it. It said, we always say, re-edited for young readers.
Oh boy!
And when I as a kid, when I saw that, you're in trouble because they would take all the good stuff out.
That's a red flag for sure.
Yeah, re-edited for young readers. So. Anyway, but I think it was a lot of fear, and I think that's what the thing traded on. The communists were going to take over, and the whole thing of the day the Earth stood still is addressing this issues of fear.
Yeah, that was the reason for making the movie. I think in the first place was that there was hysteria about the nuclear threat, and so we just spent. I don't know how many nuclear bombs we made. It was in the tens of thousands, though. Enough to destroy the world dozens of times over, and God knows what the Russians were doing either, but. Anyway, I think that whole thing was kind of a scam to enrich people that were in the defense industry. Really,
I know that you shared with me previously your annoyance and frustration with some of the things that were happening at that early period. Having the sponsorship be Kent Cigarettes. And I remember in a lot of shows, like, for instance, Leave It to Beaver, Ward Cleaver, who in real life was very much against smoking, they wanted him to smoke on the show, and he refused. So he compromised under pressure, and he always had a pack of cigarettes in his shirt pocket. Talk about that.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So, I think you feel a little bit of a responsibility having been involved with that, but that was just the way it was at that period,
And especially troublesome was the fact that due to the fact that Robert Young was a movie star, he was owner of the show basically with his partner, and so they didn't shoot anything or we didn't print anything that wasn't exactly right. So. That wasn't the normal course of events in TV shows then. The more important to most of those TV shows was finishing on budget and and not spending a lot of money, and so they'd settle for stuff that wasn't just exactly right. Well, we didn't do that on that show. We'd do take after take after take. 10 or 12 takes was not unusual, and until we got it just right, and then the director, who was a genius, we had two directors, Bill Russell, who was kind of I don't know, a hack would be a little over the top, but a journeyman basically. But the later director, Peter Tewksbury, was a genius. He was just really responsible for the fact that the show holds up even today. If you watch it, you can watch it and be taken away on a trip. It's really, it was unusual, and the fact that we did it well actually added to the damage that I think was caused by this "father knows best" and "don't question authority" concept. And so I mean, we were believable because we were all pretty good actors, and we didn't settle for anything less than just right. So we had a big impact, and I kind of feel responsible for it.
That all exploded when you got to the 1960s. And then the whole idea about questioning authority comes to the fore with the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War and the whole counterculture. It's you just went from one extreme to another, seemingly from the 50s to the 60s.
Yeah, and here we had a leader who his main concern was that we didn't lose a war on his watch. I mean,
yeah, right. Right.
I mean, God, really, come on.
In 1962, it's common knowledge, and that you were busted for having some marijuana.
Yeah.
And you're young. You're still a kid there, and they actually want to throw on you a prison sentence. And the hypocrisy, as I read that, the hypocrisy that hit me, and it must have hit you, is that what? Okay, you had some pot, and of course today we have a different understanding of it. But here they want to send a kid to possibly prison, and meanwhile, you've done a show for 10 years where they're pushing cigarettes that kill people, and there's no problem. I mean, what was going on in your mind at that time?
Yeah, well, I didn't actually. It did stop an acting career, which might have gone somewhere. I might have had a career comparable to what Michael Fox, who was about my size and a good actor. And so I missed out on that, but I really wasn't all that bummed out by it, because by that time I was tired of playing Bud, and I was only getting offered parts that were Bud parts, so it wasn't really the end of the world for me personally, but it certainly was embarrassing for an awful lot of people that were. I don't know. They had something. I don't know. I don't know exactly why, but well, in those days, in like the '60s, early '60s, the distinction between marijuana and hard drugs was really not made. And if you smoked some grass, you were a dope fiend, And so that was kind of where it was. And I never looked at it that way. I never felt like I was doing anything particularly awful, but. So you can't second guess fate either, because I got into speedway racing because I couldn't get any worth acting, and I just loved speedway and did it for 23 years, and I couldn't have enjoyed myself more. So who knows? Maybe it was a good thing I got busted.
And you also are something of an inventor.
Yeah. I've always been interested in how things worked. My mother told me that I used to take things apart all the time, not so much putting them back together, but taking them apart to find out how they worked. And that kind of curiosity has been with me all along. And so I had a business partner, a friend of mine who played guitar, and he'd come up with these problems, and I'd be working on solutions. And we've got about a dozen products now are in the music industry that are answers to dilemmas. You know.
Right. Well, that's one of the things I appreciated about reading your life is that you're a survivor. You reinvented yourself a number of times. You didn't just see yourself as a victim. You said, you know what? If this closes the door, I'll open another one.
Well, you know, a lot of that has to do with my mom. She brainwashed me as a kid. She kept had this mantra that she'd tell me before I went to sleep, and over and over and over and over and over and over. A classic brainwash, but it was, "You're Billy Gray. You can do anything," and I bought it. I got brainwashed, and I mean I kind of maybe a little over the top,
Yeah.
but still, it's better to think you can do something than say, "Oh, I can't do that," you know. Because if you think you can't do something, you probably can't, you know.
Yeah. Did you have any struggles? I mean, when I was 12 years old, you know, I was very successful as a guitar singer. I did a show for John F. Kennedy. I had my picture on the front page. I felt awkward going back to school and seeing my friends because I just wanted to fit in. And, you know, I was constantly being badgered as Elvis and everything like that. Did you have any of that as a kid?
Yeah,
People
yeah, I did have that. I frequently had my hair color changed. So I was blonde sometimes. I was a redhead sometimes. You know, and so that kind of caused some comment at school. Yeah, it was. I was never really all that gregarious as a school kid. I kind of kept to myself.
So, what would you say the role that you're most proud of in your film history that you would say?
Definitely the Day the Earth Stood Still, no question about it. If I hadn't been involved in that, I would have felt not all that proud of my acting career. But that one, I can't tell you how happy I was to be involved in that.
I'm happy too.
I was going to say, how old were you at that point?
I must have been about 13.
Okay.
Let's see, it was 51, and I was born in 38, so that makes me about 13.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a sense that people felt this was going to be a classic film, or was it just another movie at the time?
I think some people might have felt that, but I had no concept of that, and over the years I've been involved in celebrations of Robert Wise's career, and they invariably show that movie, and what's her name? I'm blanking on the lady, my mother's name. Patricia Neal.
Oh, yes.
She would be invited to be at some of these events too, and she told a story that's really kind of funny. There's a taxi scene where they're running away from the government's trying to capture him, and he's telling her that if something happens to me, you've got to tell Gort. You've got to say Klaatu Barada Nikto to Gort, or the world will end, you know. Mm-hmm. And so in this scene, he's telling her, and saying those words, and she has to repeat them. And so when she goes to, they're doing rehearsals, and every time she goes to repeat the words in the rehearsal, she cracks up and giggles, and so he asks her, "Is that the way you're going to do it?" You know, and so she said, "No, I can hold it together when we roll, you know, when the film is rolling, I can do it," and she did it, you know. But that was her take on it. The whole thing was kind of silly, basically. She didn't think it was, just another sci-fi movie to her.
Yeah. Well, Michael Rennie was amazing in that film.
Yeah. It couldn't have been anybody else. They were thinking of other people. Claude Rains was thought of, and Spencer Tracy was even thought of. But they zeroed in on the right guy there for sure.
Do you have a favorite scene, Bill?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, it's where she's sitting me down and saying to me that you didn't really see a spaceman, or you didn't really see this or that, and it was just a dream. And then I tell her I'd never call you a liar, and it really it worked out very well. It was poignant and
yeah. I just want to play a little clip from that. Hold on, let's see if we can hear it.
Bobby, what are you doing up at this hour? I couldn't sleep, Mom. I had to tell you.
Tell me what?
Well, after you left, I followed Mr. Carpenter. And where do you think he went? Right into the spaceship.
Now, Bobby, wait a minute.
Honest, Mom, I saw him. It opened up and he walked right in. And that big iron fellow was walking around, too.
Bobby, you've been dreaming again.
No, I haven't, Mom. Honest, I promise you, I saw him.
Where'd you see all this, Bobby?
On the lawn, down at the mall. In that place with the soldiers out in front.
Where were the soldiers all this time?
Well, that big iron guy grabbed him and knocked him out. I like Mr. Carpenter, Mom. I'm kind of scared.
No, don't be frightened, darling. It was only a bad dream. Here, we'll prove it to you. Tom, will you ask Mr. Carpenter to come down for a minute?
Sure.
He's in the room next to mine.
Okay.
Now, think back hard. You didn't follow Mr. Carpenter at all, did you? You hadn't even been out of the house.
Yes, I have.
Now, you didn't really see a spaceship, but you thought you did.
I'd never call you a liar.
There we go. Never call you a liar. We caught the very spot that you like. That must be telepathy, Bill.
Yeah, really. Talk about production value. Wow.
Yeah.
So, Billy,
Well,
if you could-
let me. I want to also interject there again. I want to pass over Robert Wise too quickly. He's really a major director, and did Sound of Music and all of that. Work. You talk about the directors you worked with. On Father Knows Best. What was Robert Wise like as a director?
Well, just wonderful. As a matter of fact, I think his secret was when things are going right, don't get in the way, so he never tried to give me a line reading or anything like that, because apparently I was doing it the way he liked it in the first place. So nothing about being overbearing at all. And on the personal side, he was just a really sweet guy, a lovely, nice person with no effort on his part at all. It was that's just the way he was. And sometimes you run across people like that. Rarely in the movie industry, though. But another one like that was Doris Day. Just totally a nice person, and not having to try to be a nice person. Just was a nice person. And so those two stand out in people that I've worked with. Another part of Robert Wise's credit is his editorial thing. I mean, he was the editor on Citizen Kane, so which is kind of like in your list of top movies, that's got to be right up in the top 5 for sure. And so he's got a record of work that pretty much unsurpassed.
David stood still. My wife watched it before the interview last week. She's not a science fiction fan by any means, but it's one of the more intelligent films. I think its appeal goes beyond just science fiction. It just is a very human story about how someone can make a difference in the world. And it just has so many parts to it that fit together perfectly. It really is a masterpiece. I mean, that's all I could say. I agree totally. And you're looking at that as probably the highlight. I think it's a film you could be very proud of.
Oh yeah, no question about it. And I've talked with people over the years about it, and something I've found myself repeating myself on it is that I think it should be required viewing. I think they should show it in grade school and then high school and then college and have a discussion afterwards. I think it's that important. It says so much about the country itself and just human nature in general. I mean, it's just it's a very important movie, and I'm really glad that it's held up as well as it has.
It would be great to have it paired with Invasion of the Body Snatchers. which deals with paranoia too. That'd be a great double bill to discuss this whole thing about, because again, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as you rightly note, has that same kind of hysteria of that period, the blacklist and all that kind of thing. And both of those films have dual warnings.
Yep.
Billy, when you see that little kid on the screen and you say, "That's me," if you could go back and talk to him now, knowing what you know now, what would you say to him?
I'd say you're doing a great job. Don't change a thing.
You know, I'm not sure if you know this. Paul and myself are both retired ministers. Okay, don't let that scare. Yes, don't let that scare you. But
well, I have real issues with Christianity. So if you want to get into
we have
terrorism,
real issues too.
Yeah. I mean, if we're into a conversation on terrorism, how about the concept of hell being a terrorist threat if there ever was one?
It is a frightening concept.
But it's the view that has circulated owes a lot more to Greek mythology than to anything that's actually in the Bible.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Christianity talks about being based on the Bible, and many times it really isn't. And that whole view of hell that you get in Dante and certainly in the idea in the Greeks. It's interesting that hell is rarely spoken of in the Bible. And the thing is, we're told about people who are going to be going to heaven. We're never given the name of any individual who is supposed to be going to hell. Not Judas, not Pilate, Nero, nobody. So you're very right. That was used to keep people in line. Again, it's all based on fear as a tactic.
Yeah, exactly. It's a threat, and I don't think threats are very useful in trying to influence people's behaviors. I mean, they do, but it doesn't have the staying power of reason. I mean, really, all we have to know and believe and practice is the golden rule. I think the world would be a perfect place if everybody just acknowledged that, hey, I can't do anything to you that I didn't want you to do to me. If we just followed that one, everybody would just be a happy camper.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't realize that Day of the Earth Stood Still was based on Harry Bates's novel Farewell to the Master.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And Bates draws a striking similarity between the character of Klaatu and Jesus. And what I did for a little study of myself is I drew these similarities in some of the things they both said. So let me just throw this out to our listeners. Both Klaatu and Jesus have a unique mission. Klaatu said, in his words, "I come to bring a warning to your world. And what I have to say is far too important to entrust to just one nation or group of nations. It affects every living being on your planet." Jesus' statement on his mission is, "I have come that you may have life and more abundantly, because God loved the world so much he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life." The second thing I noticed is they both die for their cause violently and unjustly. I mean, Klaatu was shot, Jesus is crucified. The third similarity is both are raised to life again. And the fourth similarity is that both of them offer a choice of life or death. In the closing statement, Klaatu says, "Join us and live in peace, or continue on your present course and face oblivion." Jesus' closing statement was, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will never die, but has eternal life." I just think there had to be, in Bates's original novel, which was captured in the film, some religious overtones, because all of life, I think, has those basic ingredients. We're all looking for some sense of hope. And yet we look at our world and we get more and more frustrated, and we're looking for someone, the Bible calls it a Messiah, to bring us a hope outside of ourselves, because we just don't have either the ability or the wisdom to resolve our crisis. So I just thought it was very interesting in seeing
Oh
the
yeah,
film
no,
in that perspective.
I think there's definitely it was a conscious decision on the part of the writers to make those comparisons. In fact, his name was Carpenter, which is
Right.
kind of has something
That's
else to say
true.
about it,
That's
you know?
true. Jesus was
Yeah.
I never thought of that. Did you, Paul?
No, I actually hadn't. That is a very common
If I
thing.
were a carpenter and you were a lady.
You
Well,
know,
it's-
I ran across something on television just the other day that was interesting to me. The Genesis part of the Bible. Apparently, there was an earlier version of Genesis where God took some dirt and made Adam and Eve, and they were both equal, and apparently it didn't work out because Adam didn't think that was such a great idea. He would like a little subservience, and so I didn't find out how it was Lilith. It was not Eve. It was Lilith. Adam and Lilith started the whole thing off, and then it got that concept got dismissed, and another the Adam and Eve thing took over. Have you ever heard about that? That was new to me.
Oh yeah, the actual fact is that original account is in the opening part of Genesis. You really have two different accounts of creation in Genesis, and the first one is the one with the equality that human beings, male and female, were made in God's image. But it's starting in chapter 2, verse 4. You get a different version where it's much more. Adam has a central role.
Well, that kind of goes. It speaks basically to my original concept of the damage of this Father knows best thing. You know, I mean that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
You should defer to someone, and apparently Adam, the way that the story was told on this TV show that I watched, Bible something or other, that the mate was supposed to be subservient to the male part of the thing. I mean, maybe that's maybe the genesis of our problem in the first place is that people oughtn't to defer.
That's not the original concept, but it's the concept that gets developed very quickly. That the male superiority.
Right.
That's not really there in either of these accounts in Genesis, but it emerges very early. And one of the curse that's placed on Eve for disobeying God, Adam is similarly so, but is the idea that her husband will lord it over her, will dominate her. Right. And that's a sign of sin. That's not a sign of God's original creation, but that's what it ends up being. And the story continues always to be that you have the Ten Commandments, you have the clear teaching, you have the standards of loving kindness and mercy and walking with our God and all of that. But then you end up with human greed and pride. And that creates this combination where everything gets distorted and turned upside down.
Yeah,
I think. I think also in Genesis, right from the very start, it's not so much a problem of overbearing authority that in our understanding God puts upon people. The mystery is giving us so much free will. I mean, He allows us to do so many things in our world that are self-destructive. And I think of Klaatu's statement now as he ends his mission and tells the people, now, we're not talking about you giving up your freedom, except the freedom to act irresponsibly. There's this whole concept of, we don't mind authority. As a matter of fact, we're all looking for some guidance because this is a world that's in chaos. And we're looking for guidance as long, to me, as it gives us the ability to work and resolve those things under some guidelines that are based on love.
Yeah.
So I don't mind my wife being subservient to my wife because I know she loves me and I have her vested interest in heart. But who wants to have a dominating woman?
Yeah, well, on the same track, who wants to have a dominating mate?
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, Bill, we love you and we're very proud of you.
I got to thank my mom for brainwashing me. It took. So thank you, Mom.
Yeah, thank you, Mom. Paul, anything you want to add before we close?
No, I just think it's this is fascinating, and certainly there's the overriding concept of going back to the day the earth stood still, and all of these at their best is an awareness of both the possibilities and limitations that we have as human beings, and the apparent shortcut is to dominate and control and resort to our own personal desires. Those give us some short-term benefits, but long-term they're disastrous. And I think the kind of fear and even distrust and misrepresentation that we associate with that period in the 50s, it's not an idyllic period. It was a very fearful period and a very unjust. People lost their career. People committed suicide in all of that. And that's, again, the fear mongering. The one command that's repeated more often in the Bible than any other is do not be afraid.
Yeah.
And fear is in many ways a source of all of the negative things in our lives.
Yes, debilitating. It stops you from being effective in dealing with anything if you're overly fearful. I mean, fear has a it's not an unuseful thing. I mean, you should be afraid of some things, like putting your hand on a hot stove, like you should fear being burned, but I think really, if I ever come into some real serious money, I'd like to start a foundation that just encourages the existence and the acknowledgement of the golden rule. And if that were appreciated the way it ought to be, the world would be a wonderful place. So
well, maybe we're not through with you yet, Bill. Maybe we'll do that. Listen, one quick question I forgot to ask, Bill. Did you see the new Day the Earth Stood Still?
I've seen sections of it, but I was warned. People would tell me they'd send me reviews of it, and apparently it was panned horribly. So maybe it's a good thing I wasn't involved. When they did that, when I heard it was going to be done, I went and got an agent and said, "Hey, I'd like to have a cameo. Be the taxi driver or something. Just a cameo of some sort." And I threw my hat in the ring there, and they gave me. I did get an interview with the casting people, and they gave me the sides to work on. They gave me Professor Bornhard's dialogue, and I wasn't looking for a major role, and so I actually I boned up on it and I did the lines, and I hired an opera singer who had a side job of teaching dialects, and I tried to get a little bit of a German dialect into it, and I gave him I made a little recording of it, and I gave it to him, and never heard back from him. But it kind of turns out it's a good thing, because apparently the movie was a stinker. And so that's another one. Never question fate, because I wouldn't have liked to have been involved in something that was less of a movie than the original.
Right.
And that
well, Bill, Paul and I are both great science fiction fans, and I think Paul would agree with me that this has been a very special day for us, having talked with you on a film that the three of us just adore. And will stand the test of time, not only in this generation, but in generations to come. In some ways, you've become immortalized. And if they don't know the name Billy Gray, all someone has to say is, that kid that was in The Day the Earth Stood Still. Oh,
that's
him,
the one.
yeah.
That's the one. Thank
the
you
one.
very much.
So,
I like
Bill-
one of the quotes we have from our tradition. In Jesus, it says what summarizes all of the law, the prophets, all of the stuff that's in for him, the Hebrew scriptures. It's to love God, and then also to love your neighbor as yourself.
There it is.
It doesn't mean you don't love yourself. I mean, there's an appropriate love of yourself, taking care of yourself, but love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus also quotes the golden rule. So that's all in there.
No, I don't think you need to go any further than that. I mean, that says it all.
And Billy, we love you, and thank you again for coming on our show.
Hey, my pleasure.
Yeah, it was great
Thank
talking
you.
to you, Bill.
This is
Okay.
Ralph, and
Paul.
10 times the terror. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for stopping in. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to
It's 10 times the terror.
the podcast.
You are impossible.
Ralph, you're well-intentioned, but clearly wrong. Thank you for listening to 10 Times the Terror. This podcast would not be possible without listeners like you. You can find out more about our podcast by visiting our website, 10timestheterror.com. That's 10xtheterror.com.